First section in chapter 1 is on parent functions and transformations. I'm going to focus on parent functions in this first lesson. As you can see, there are four basic parent functions. Constant function is where your y is equal to 1. And for example, this is going to be a line that's a horizontal line. Each of the y's is going to have a 1 as its value. You could have any point for x's, but your y is always going to equal 1. Therefore, f of x equals 1, or y is equal to 1. Either way, you can write that. The reason why they write it as f of x is because this is a function of x. And function basically means each x has exactly one y. Another parent function is a linear function, and the linear function is in a line, and it's where f of x equals x. In other words, whatever x is equal to, the y is equal to. Points like 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, -1, -1 would form this line at a 45-degree angle. Absolute value. Absolute value turns a positive number into a positive number and a negative number into the positive number. So if you put 1 in for x, it would make it a 1. If you put -1 in for x, you'd make it 1. So that means that there's actually a reflection over the y-axis, and all of the y values would be positive, except for at 0. The quadratic, which basically is an exponent of 2, is where it's f of x equals x squared. And this, again, if you put in 1, you'd get 1, because 1 squared is 1. 2, you would get 4. 2 squared equals 4. 3, you would get 9. So it rises quite sharply. And also, the same thing is true. If you put in a -2 here for x, you would remember to put that in parentheses and remember that -2 times -2 is a positive 4. So these numbers are always going to be 0 or positive, and therefore it's going to look the same thing on the left as the right, similar to absolute value. Now, along with these parent functions, constant, linear, absolute value, and quadratic, you have inputs and outputs. And the other name of these is domain and range. The inputs are all your possible x's. So if I look at this constant parent function, the possible x's are going to be all real numbers. If you think about the number line, all of those x's are going to hit all of those numbers. And if you think about the y's on this one, or the output numbers, which y's are going to be hit? They're only going to be hit at 1, where y is equal to 1. So inputs, all real numbers, outputs, y's equal to 1 on this constant function. Going to the linear, what are the possible x's that are hit? It's kind of like if you were to make a shadow from this line to that x-axis, what would be the x's that are hit? And that answer is all real numbers. What about the y's? As you extend this line infinitely in both directions, all the y's are going to get hit as well. So the inputs, all real numbers, outputs, all real numbers. Absolute value. Again, thinking about the shadow idea on the x-axis, you're going to have all real numbers for the inputs, and your outputs are going to be the y's, and let's see, it's going to start at 0 and go all the way in the positive direction, which means y is greater than or equal to 0. And the quadratic, same idea as the absolute value. You can see that in this form, where you can write down all real numbers, y equals 0. There are different ways of indicating what these are, but at this point, we'll just, the goal is to understand what the inputs and outputs are and what the parent functions are.